Can't hear you, Stephen.
Bremerton is the size it is because of the shipyard here. If it wasn't for that, it would be no bigger than Kingston. You know, it's all about, you know, and right now, anything near any military base is going up in price like crazy because even during the recession, pretty much job. Not that I can't get laid off, because there was a time where I probably could have when Congress doesn't pass a budget, but for the most part, I was still employed and all that. All right.
Get to the next tomorrow. Remember buses have big engines? Remember big buses have
Steve's
big
still muted.
They can drive really fast. They need to get to the people stop
Mm-hmm.
because people are going to be so worried about it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
We can
Now I'm
hear
coming through.
you.
Okay. I just had to,
We can
let me
hear
see here. For some reason, it is not, well, let's see. How come I wonder why we're not, oh, there it comes. Okay. Wow. That took a long time for the screen to get over to the, get over to Zoom there. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I had to get you know, getting the audio source properly selected here and tied in with the everything else. So, okay. So let's try this again. Welcome everybody to the March meeting of the Seattle Robotics Society.
Oh, yeah.
And as you can, hey Richard, can you you mute your mic?
Oh, sorry. I thought I had done that.
Nope. Thank you. Anyway, as you can see over my shoulder back here, that's our view out of our front porch, looking out over the city, and those are the Oahe's way off in the distance there. It's actually not very far. It's only about 15 miles or so. And so we're loving it over here. It's blue sky, looks just a tiny bit of haze, pretty similar to what you see in that picture there, pretty close to that. So let's see here. So we will follow the usual agenda. I won't go through all of this in detail, but this is coming. Of course, as you heard earlier, the meeting is being recorded, so it'll be posted on YouTube a little later. Try to get to that here early this week. We are planning a trip back to Seattle here this next week to visit my sons and catch up with some other folks over there. So we will be in town for about a week while we're doing that. If you don't already have your microphone muted, appreciate it if you would do that. Just that way we kind of keep the focus on the current speaker. So, but if you do have something, do use the chat to put in links and ask questions and things like that. I don't always remember to put it up, but I do have it up today, so I'll try to keep an eye on that if anybody throws questions out there. And then during the presentation, of course, that's a good way to ask questions too. I'm going to continue to do these, host these meetings here from Idaho, and we will, when we get to doing in-person meetings, then we'll kind of work out how that's going to, the logistics of that. We don't really have that nailed down yet, but at the moment, Lloyd's the local guy, and I'm sure he'll be happy to have assistance to make these meetings continue to happen, particularly for folks that are not in Washington and want to be able to join the meetings. And of course, I like to be able to continue to join the meeting. So let's see. So yeah, it's a little bit, yeah. So I kind of covered a little bit of that on here. So there'll probably be a need for some assistance in the behind the scenes to make that work at the first field house. So when that all kind of happens, probably looking at probably not before mid-year to actually start meetings there again. So, but keep an eye out for that. Upcoming things up in Monroe, Battling Robotics. So that's a robotic combat robots up in Monroe coming in mid-April. And then there's a Robot Combat League National Championship, May 5 to 7. And I don't recall exactly where that is, but there's a link here. These slides will be posted on the website, so you can go and you can click these links and get the details on this stuff, or you can just look that up. Robo Games 2023 coming in Pleasanton, California, and then the Snowco Makerspace regularly does meetings, actually more often than we do. So if you're looking for something in between our meetings, then consider joining up with these guys if you happen to be able to get up to their meeting space up the north end, Snohomish. Robothon committee, I'm gonna go ahead and let Lloyd just kind of give us an update on this one. And,
Okay. So June 10th, we're going to do virtual exhibition number 4. This will be a online event, just like we've been doing for the last couple of years. It's going to be noon to 3. I don't think Donna's put up the registration page yet. We're actually meeting next week on all that. So look for additional information for that one coming soon, including getting signed up. Essentially, we're going to have about 6. I think we're going to do 6 slots again, because that seems to be about the right number of people. And of course, if we have more, we'll always do another one. We'll keep doing these. Next event is going to be Robo Magellan. It's actually Robo Magellan Plus. So it's going to be a Robo Magellan run at Sunnycrest Elementary School. We're still pinning down the details on this, but so far everything's looking good. We will also let you know in the next week or two what the plus is going to be. We're looking at doing possibly a sumo bot or a line maze or something like that. So we'll have that set up at the Sunnycrest Elementary School. So yeah, stay tuned.
now this is the, let's see, I went online and I looked up Sunnycrest, and there's more than one. So this is the one that's in, is it Kent or Federal Way?
No, I think it would be more Federal Way.
Federal Way, yeah.
Yeah, so this is Sunnycrest Elementary School, and we'll provide the address and everything.
Yeah, okay.
Your bot will not have to navigate from one Sunnycrest school to the other. Especially on the freeway.
Right. Anybody have any questions for Lloyd on that?
I'll go to the background again. Thanks, folks.
Okay.
Yep, that's it in the chat window.
Okay. And there we go. Oh yeah, okay. There's a couple more items in there. Okay, good. Presenters, always interested in suggestions for presenters to talk to us, and with our virtual format here, we can pull people in from anywhere, literally. There's a kind of probably a small band in, let's see, I guess it would be kind of eastern, probably middle of Asia to the east of East Asian area. That is a little bit, we would have to actually shift our meeting time to accommodate a presenter from there, just because it's like the middle of the night for them. But most other places, it's actually a fairly reasonable time of day for them. Some of them in the afternoons and the evenings or in the morning, early morning. So, feel free to send suggestions to the club email, and I'll see what we can work out. And if we do have to shift our meeting time, we'll be sure that we've got a plenty of advance notice of that, and then that'll show up that way on the website. And then I'll also announce it at all of the meetings leading up to that. So let's see. This is the current lineup that's coming. So I'm hoping to fill a few more slots here in the next few weeks, and probably shouldn't be too difficult actually to completely fill it out for the balance of this year. So that's pretty cool. So lots of cool possibilities and things. The June time slot is it's potentially open. Professor Goldman was going to be presenting. It was originally scheduled to present this month. Personal emergency came up. He was not able to do that, and Lloyd was gracious enough to step in and do a GPT chat. So chat GPT. So thank you, Lloyd.
Hey, Steve,
yeah.
This is ironic because that's also the reason I was doing it for the C++ users group, because our speaker had a personal emergency. Somebody gods on that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's stuff happens. I mean, right? I mean, we'll do the best we can to try to line these things up. And I think that part of the trick on our side is touching base with these folks as early as possible. So I will probably like Derek Wang here from the UW, his presentation is in April. So I will probably this coming week, I will go ahead and reach out to him, make sure that he's still on board with that, and give myself as much time as possible if I do have to shuffle things around or possibly pull together something. Most likely if let's see, where was it? Let's see. Most likely, if I had to trade something out or fill in, then we probably just pick one of these. And there's some of these topics are new. We haven't done them before, but there's also some that we have done. But stuff everything changes. Technology is a moving target, so you can always go back and even redo discussions, and there's new stuff to talk about. So most likely, if we had to backfill, it would be something like this. We just have an open discussion. So anyway, feel free to reach out to people and invite them to talk to us, and get contact info and send that on to me, and then I will do my best to reach out and get them lined up for a slot. So let's see. And if you have any other ideas besides this list, let me know. There's a few of them that we've been able to tick off the list because we've had those discussions, but if there's other ones that you think would be interesting to add in, I'm all for that. Post meeting, we're planning on going hiking early this afternoon, so I will probably have to bail on this. You can leave this. I can leave the Zoom meeting up for, and then if I can just transfer the host to somebody else, then you can just continue talking, or there's not that much to say, whatever. Anyway, we'll normally continue after the meeting and usually shut recording off for that. So it's just gonna be general discussion about whatever topics anybody wants to chat about. So here we are. That's not too bad. A little less talking than usual. Who has something that they would like to share, show, demo, any rants, raves, etc.?
No rants.
Rants, go ahead.
No rants. I have something to share if you don't mind. So we just found that we got we signed some paperwork, and looks like in Everett at the Angels of the Winds Arena, it's the old Xfinity Arena in Everett. We're gonna put on a Maker Faire Everett. That's October 15th. So that's kind of a like a big show and tell for technology, things people build, right? It's not a crafts fair. It's more about things, and robotics fits in there pretty well. Matter of fact, I originally went to Mini Maker Faire in Seattle to, show off robotics. So there's a lot of room there, and there's some potential area for test robotics. There's a big activities area for maybe having some, not necessarily like, I mean, certainly SRS could do something if there was time, or sell t-shirts or whatever. But if there's some sort of ad hoc group that wants to get together and put something together there, just reach out to me, and I'm willing to help out with that. And then just because it wasn't on there, I threw it in the chat, but the Pop Can Challenge is at the Seattle Exhibition Hall on May 6th. So
Hey, Chaz, are you going to
Yeah.
be able to make our Robothon planning meeting next week?
yeah, I will. Yep.
Let's talk about that there.
That's what I have to share. Thanks.
Thank you.
Steve, you're muted.
Anybody else? Don't all talk at once.
I have something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can I do a share screen?
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if this works. Want to go over here, open this up. Okay, I have a project for controlling a robot over the internet. Can everybody see that? The diagram? Okay, well,
Yep.
the first line here is remote operation, where a human is sitting at the operator PC and he's controlling a robot via a local PC. It's local to the robot. And this is done via Chrome Remote Desktop, which is an application you can download to 2 PCs so that workers can access an office computer at home. So the second line is for local operation, for the sending commands from the PC, the local PC, to the robot. And there's a user interface that sends commands to a microcontroller, that sends commands to a motor controller, that sends commands to a robot. Let's see if I can change to the next one. This is the user interface. The program is run on the local PC, but you see it on the operator PC because the operator PC is controlling the local PC. And you have a webcam view of the robot. And then down here, you have a graphic, and you can operate the graphic with the arrow keys here. And the left and right arrow keys will highlight the different segments, like the base or the shoulder, the elbow or the wrist or the claw. And then the up and down keys will raise or lower for these middle ones, turn clockwise, counterclockwise there, open and close the gripper. So this is the setup for the local PC. The screen is tilted so that the webcam can be looking at the robot. And then here's the microcontroller, the motor controllers, and the robot there. And here's a close-up. I used an Arduino. It's receiving commands from the local PC via the USB cable, and then transmitting individual signals to the motor controllers. This looks like kind of a maze there, but it's really pretty simple. It's 5 motor controllers, 9110s. These are the this is the power voltage, and you can see it takes up 2 pins. The ground voltage is green because that was the convention on the breadboard. These are the signals from the Arduino. One signal turns the motor clockwise, the other one counterclockwise, depending on how you hook it up. And then this, the blue and the black go to the motor. And there are 5 motors, so there are 5 of these. So that's why it looks like that. Okay, so then this is the robot. This is a kit. It's an OWI OWI 535 that you can get off of Amazon for $40. So I just went with a cheap robot for this for the test. And then this is me at the library, about half a kilometer away from my apartment. And you can see down here I'm operating the arrow keys. There's a little bit of a lag. So I'm selecting which part of the robot I want to use, and then I use the arrow keys to turn the robot. in the way that I want. And okay, so these are the next steps. I have an ESP32 camera module that I want to connect to a mobile robot with a manipulator and see if I can drive it around on over the internet. And so that's it. Any questions, comments?
So how do you, is this open or accessible to, you know, how does, I mean, do you have some kind of, so like through your website or something, or can people, how are you allowing access, or how's that working?
Oh, okay. Well, Chrome Remote Desktop, you have to download it to your computer. So if somebody wanted to operate my robot, first of all, they'd have to download Chrome Remote Desktop. And then we have to create a Gmail account. And then the two computers are tied together by having the same Gmail account. And then in Remote Desktop, you can select who's going to be the control computer and which computer is going to be operated. So it's basically, if I were to share this with anybody, all I'd have to do is give them the Gmail account name for email and the password to the account.
What, let's see. Is there, what's your goal for creating this system? What do you, is this an educational tool, or is this just a fun project, or what's your motivation?
Well, right now it's a fun project, but I've been trying to think of applications. The one that I've been thinking about for a long time is what I would call micro mining. There are a lot of abandoned mines that are economically unviable because if you had human beings mining them, they were abandoned because they were economically unviable for human beings, because you'd have to create this huge infrastructure at the site to accommodate humans, and then you'd have to have OSHA safety standards and getting all these permits. But if you just have robots, you just drive up a minivan, dump off the robots, a Starlink, and solar panels. I'm glossing over a lot of details here, but it would be a lot easier. And so there's some mines, like there's this mine up in Everett. It's about an hour's drive east of Everett called Monte Cristo. And it was a big deal in the 1890s, but they had to close it down because of the transportation infrastructure costs at the time. But the last assay was like $5 a ton, which I think that was for gold. And the price of gold now is like $2,000 an ounce, and it was only $20 back then. So that's $500 a ton. So if you had a prospecting robot able to go in there, and chip away at the walls, presumably if you could bring out a ton, load it into a small van and drive it out, that's $500 there. And a cubic meter is 5 tons, so that would be $2,500. So it seems like it would have some practical applications.
Cool. Anybody else got any other technical questions?
It's kind of interesting, the micro mining. I hadn't even considered that. Of course, I think everybody probably thinks of space mining robots these days, right? And, how do you get them up there, and how do you bring anything back? But it makes a lot of sense to do it, here on Earth, where you don't have to worry about toxic chemicals down in mines and air and the heat and all that sort of stuff necessarily. Have you looked any further into like what a robotic mining tool would look like or anything, especially considering it's micro mining? Have you taken that step yet?
I looked at this several years ago, and I didn't have any plans for actually building something at the time, but I looked at it from a conceptual point. And was it Alex who had the the computer on the mounted on the wheelchair, the motorized wheelchair. If you had something with really big wheels, I think it could navigate through the rough terrain that would be inside the mine. And then you need a jackhammer and a pretty big battery power supply. Then you would need like some kind of wagon to carry along, to carry the ore out. You need robot arms with grippers to pick up stuff that falls on the ground. There'd probably have to be some kind of servicing robot in case something breaks down so that you could tow it out. You need some kind of battery switching station. So, you know, there's a whole list of things that need to be done before it would become practical.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, having the human in the loop would definitely solves a lot of the problems of trying to create an autonomous robot that could do all of those things is an enormous challenge. And having a person, at least, where you can, they can recognize the situation or recognize the need to do something, and then can just direct the robot. So cool idea. Anybody else?
Yeah, question. Did you write the software for your user interface there with the D-pad and the camera?
Talking about this thing. Yeah, I wrote it in a computer language called processing, which is free. However, the video, I didn't know how to do the video in processing, so I asked ChatGPT, tying into today's talk, and it wrote the routine for me. It was like 20 lines or so, and I had to tweak it a little bit, but it was very helpful. This part down here, this is a graphic that I drew in Paint 3D. I drew a template with all these blocks blank, and then I made 5 copies of the drawing with each one highlighted. And then what's happening is the illustration, the photos are, what am I trying to say? The picture files are cycled through by pressing the arrow keys. So it's not like it's drawing it each time. It's just replacing one photo with another.
That's pretty cool.
Huh.
The reason I like processing is because it uses graphics for graphical user interfaces, and also it can communicate with the Arduino. It's through the serial port. It's got some commands that make that very easy, so that it can send and receive commands from an Arduino.
So it looks like it's essentially a text-based programming environment. I don't know if anybody else can check that link that I posted in the chat there. There's a reference guide that lists the commands. Looks like you've got array functions, you've got conversion functions, primitives, string functions. Oh, looks like it's got lots of capability, huh? Was it pretty easy to do what your task?
With processing?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I like the language. It's based on C, sort of like the Arduino language is based on C. They're very similar in some of the commands and the syntax, for the for loops and putting the semicolons at the end of each line. So that makes it easier. I can't program in C, but I can program in processing, and I like it. Another reason I like it is you don't have to worry about linking and the object files and all that stuff. It just goes. You can download the stuff from processing.org, and it's free, but they ask for donations. And then they have these vast libraries. Like I had to load a camera library in for this program. Go back here. So you can see that there's all this empty space here. and I'm trying to think what I can fill in there. Not that it's required, but it just seems like it's asking for something to be put in there, like battery power, temperature, whatever. Something to switch between cameras. You know, I was talking about these little camera modules here. If I can get them to work, then I could have alternate camera views, which would be useful for any kind of application.
Wow. Huh. Wow, I'm just flipping through the reference guide here. It's extensive. They look like they put a lot of work into this thing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like,
I've
Go ahead.
played with processing, and it's basically C. The biggest difference that I can think of is that instead of having a main that is the first program, you have a couple of other function names. There's one that is executed repeatedly in a loop, and one that's only executed once at the beginning of the program. That's the only difference, really. That you know, it's integrated with graphics, I guess.
Hey, Joe, do you have a picture of anything, the programming itself, that you could show us? Share up on your screen.
Let me see here. I have processing 3. Let's see if this goes there. It takes a while to load, probably because the Zoom session is in there too. Okay, open recent. Are you seeing this?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the program itself, Interbot 5, and let's see. I had to import a library. Is that what it's called? Anyways, for the serial communications, then one for the video, and I also had to get it, I think, from GitHub. I don't know. Anyways, so these are the images right here for the robot arm, for the graphic that I cycle, and then this receives this. Where are we here? Oh, I think we're still setting things up. Then void setup. This sets up the size of the window. The background 0 is black. I'm accessing the serial port through COM3 at 9600. Then here's the camera stuff. This sets up the camera. This right here was written by ChatGPT, and then I'm loading in the images that I drew, and then there's one image that's shown on the screen. So and then it cycles between them, as I said. Then draw, because it's a graphic oriented thing, instead of main, it says draw. And then if camera is available, it reads the camera and it shows the image at 0, 0, which is the upper left corner, I guess. And then the rest of it is just reading the keys and responding to the keys. And you can see here that these are the arrow keys right here, right, left, up, down. And originally I did it on the number pad on my computer, but the one that I'm using for the local computer is just one that I had laying around. It didn't have a number pad, so I ended up using the arrow keys instead. And you can see it's not very hard. If you press a key, then it has a little subroutine for this is a keyword in processing, and basically it says if the key is pressed, you go down to this little routine right here. They don't call them routines. What do they call them now? Functions. Okay. So, anyways, and then these are things that you send over to the my port, right? This sends a K over to the Arduino, and then the Arduino reads the K and it decides which pin it should have as a high voltage that it sends over to the motor controllers.
Well, looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah, there's a book called Getting Started with Processing. It's a short book. You can probably find it at Amazon or at the local library, and it really gets you started there. The one thing that I found missing in it is it doesn't tell you how to send commands to the microcontroller. It tells you how to receive commands, but it doesn't tell you how to send them. But you can find that at the website. There's lots of reference material at the website too, processing.org.
Cool. Okay. Anybody else got any other questions for Joe? Oh, I hate those links. Sorry about that long Google search link there. That's what comes up when you plug in that book, but it does bring it up at the top of the list. So on my oh, there it is. Okay, maybe that one's better. Yeah. Oh, that one's much better. Yeah, I like that one. The Amazon link is way better. And I'll post that one. Okay, I'll just get rid of that other link when I edit these chat notes. So, anybody else get anything? Thank you, Joe. That was cool.
So, how do I get back to having the full screen and
I can do this, so I can take you.
Okay.
Do you have something else to show us? Yeah, I'll just
no,
take over.
That was it.
That was what you needed. Okay. Yeah. I have that. I have a button for that on my end here. So, yeah. So anybody, let's see, what are we at? 11:40, 10:40 your time. Anybody else get something? Got something to share? Say, Chaz, the event that you mentioned, is that let's see, was that a maker
Maker
event?
Faire?
Maker Faire? Yeah. Do you have a link for that, or could you post one in the chat there for that?
Yeah, so I signed the license last night. They haven't countersigned it yet, so technically I can't use the images that they provided already, and that was the only holdup for not sharing the website yet. Is just because it has the licensed images on it.
Okay.
But I'll send it to you directly.
Okay, that'd be fine. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
I'll share something if nobody else has anything. But so I as many of you probably have used, I like using servos sometimes when I can because they're easy, right? You can just send it a command to go to a certain place and it goes there, which is nice instead of like a complicated motor or encoder sort of situation. But sometimes I found, particularly in like my robot where there's four-wheel steering, right? So it can turn the wheels at 45-degree angles, and turn in a circle, or it can turn on their sides and the robot could crab sideways or whatever. It's also, it can turn with regular Ackerman steering. But what I found was servos, even like I won't say expensive, even the ones that are not the cheapest servos you can buy, middle of the road servos. I don't have one on. That one. No, it isn't. But even with the, whatever, the $20, $30 servos instead of $10 servos, the repeatability on them isn't great, particularly if you're trying to do steering with robots. So I found a solution that is working out pretty darn well. And it's the part number, and I apologize if I've mentioned this before, because sometimes I'm in a couple different robot clubs. So, but it's a Apple SAM 5600 5600. So AS 5600 comes on a little baggie like this. You can get them from Amazon, and they come with a little tiny magnet. I'll try to show this to you. I don't know how it's going to show up, but I 3D printed. The idea being that it's an absolute encoder. So it knows the position. You wouldn't want to use this for something like how many times you've turned your wheel. That would be something that would just tick away, like how many revolutions or how many ticks per revolution. But the idea is, because I'm just turning my wheels 90 degrees, though 180 would be fine. I just happen to only need 90. I just modeled up a little board holder for it in Onshape. Onshape's a free CAD application. It's a free CAD program on the internet, so you can just grab any old computer and CAD stuff up. I got hooked on that after I started sharing stuff with my wife, and she wanted to see what I was making for her. But so here's a little board itself, and it's facing down. There's a little sensor on the bottom, and this sits as a cap on top of the shaft where my wheel comes up through bearings. And then so I just inserted the little tiny magnet that comes with the thing, and it just press fits on top of the shaft itself, little 1/2-inch shaft. And it does a great job. Like, it just measures the field, and so when it rotates, and it really cleaned it up. So I just had to build a little feedback loops into my robots. And the one downside of these is that they're I2C, which isn't a downside. I actually prefer that, but they're all the same address and they're not addressable. I think there might be an addressable version out there, but not in the easy to go buy your own board sort of situation. Anyways, not get it overnight from Amazon anyhow. And so I ended up having to order. I'll have to look it up. I'll go look because it's actually on the robot. But I have an I2C multiplexer, so I actually send like an I2C command, which switches to a different port, and then I can send the initialization to the actual board. So you have to go and send initialization 4 times if you have four different things. But I think Greg, who's not, I don't think he's online today, he also ended up using something like this for his joints, because if you're trying to make that very repeatable motion, like I really want to go to 90 degrees or 82 degrees or whatever it is, it's pretty nice to give you some feedback to control your robot. So kudos to this little board. And it's, I don't remember the price, but I'm kind of sort of cheap, fiscally conservative, and they're pretty affordable. So
yeah, they're a 6-pack on Amazon is $18, so $3 a piece.
That's my kind of sensor right there. So
So that magnet, it must be magnetized across the cylinder instead of from one to the other.
Yeah, so you can't use any old magnet, right? Because
that's a very interesting magnet. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, and it's just a tiny guy. You could tell by my finger. Like, it's just this. And I ended up like, it took me like 2 or 3 prints to get that hold just perfect. Actually, but pressing them into plastic was a challenge because I didn't want to heat up the magnet, right, and melt it in. So I took my Panda vise and I 3D printed a different vise head for it, so I could, create a little tiny mini press for the magnets even. And maybe that was a little overboard and I was having some fun, but it was still.
You gotta love 3D printers. That's just awesome.
So much.
You needed a tool, so you made one.
I made a tool, yeah. Yeah, I love 3D printers. I used to think they were just for building tchotchkes and toys and whatever, but I tell you what, you get Onshape, it's free for makers, and you need something for a robot. There is just no. I wish I would have not put off learning CAD sooner, because it's not hard. I don't have any like education in CAD at all, and just like between YouTube and trying stuff out, and like the need for something became the reason to learn how to do it. And like now it's like every single time I want to do something, I just like I build something and make sure there's plenty of holes with inserts, so I could just build something on top of it. And if this doesn't work out exactly, I get rid of it. And every once in a while, like I didn't really like how I did this part. I ended up not caring for this section. So I'm like, next time I'll just change it. And it's just so easy to print them. And they take a while, but like, this little 4 of these guys here was like maybe an hour. And if you're not, I mean, how else would you do that? Like a Dremel, and maybe you're a machinist or something like that. But I just set it and forget it, go back to it, and it's done. So, yeah. So, if you haven't learned CAD yet, I highly recommend Onshape. So, yeah, Carrie has some great notes there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Chaz. Anybody
yeah.
else? I don't know. Maybe this will be probably a lot of you guys. Maybe you guys have seen this stuff, or seen this particular video. But I got a blast from the past here for you. Let's see here. Whoops. I'm gonna share the audio. So my audio is gonna go blank here while this plays. So. So if anybody has, these guys have, they're still out there, I guess. I don't know what the current state of production is on these cool robot things, but Adam Savage of Mythbusters there, he's got a video online. You can look, if you look this thing up and find his page, you know, he was like super excited, built a special custom box for transporting this thing. And he talked about getting one of the early prototypes of this thing. And it's, you know, the robot itself is, you know, like probably, I think, the legs about like that, you know, so it's, if you could see that. So it's, you know, it's a pretty good size little thing, not a cheap toy, but definitely cool. And I think it's got like 18 servos or something like that. So, you know, each leg has 3 servos, and then there's multiple body servos. And then it's really the ability of this thing to mimic the movements of an actual spider is pretty incredible. I mean, these guys did an amazing job of creating a robotic emulation of a real spider. I mean, it's just, it's remarkable, but it's also very delicate, I understand, because he talked about having to replace a number of servos, because like when he first got it, I think he said he didn't realize that you want to have the thing up off of its legs as it's powering up, because it will literally strip the servos as it tries to, as the legs kind of go through their calibration and movement process. And so they may have made improvements on that since then, but this is, my grandnephews love this video about this thing, because it's like, it's a super creepy robot, but it's awesome.
Yeah. Steve,
yeah.
That's the comment I was going to make on that. Engineered to be creepy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they get definitely 10 stars for creepiness. I mean, it's because the robot is just so, you know, the ability of that single eye in the middle of it too is like, it's beautiful. I mean, the way that they did that, and you could see how it has different colors that it can do. And then when they created this video where they put a whole bunch of these things all together and then created this coordinated, you know, show with them. I have no idea how they managed that, but yeah, so
historically and slightly less creepy, folks watch the movie Runaway, Tom Selleck, like 1980 or something.
Yep.
We've come a long way.
Yeah. Yes. You know, I think that the thing that was creepiest about that movie, the Runaway movie, was a bullet with a camera in it that could be targeted to an individual, and that bullet could literally fly around obstacles to hit the target it was programmed to hit. Now that is creepy.
Yeah, and the premise was that it was using the person's body biometrics, so it would only chase one person. It is pretty interesting premise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Who was the villain in that? Was a rock star
from Kiss.
Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He also did a really good job.
Yes.
Yeah.
I sent you a link, Steve, for other weird things to do with spiders and robots ish.
Okay. Thanks, Richard.
I'd share it, but I'm on my phone. It's a new phone. I'm not sure how to share a tab on a phone. So I'll let you share that one.
Okay.
I've got a story about another creepy spider thing at one of the BritCons several years ago. Someone had built a spider-themed spaceship. Okay, about two feet in diameter, with all the legs, and he covered the surface of this robot with the Lego gear shift, which is a tiny little gear shift that you can the size of the minifigures. And if you get black ones and you put them all in a row, it's like the hairs on the surface of the spider. So imagine this thing that's feet in size, covered with these little hairs. It was pretty creepy.
I think I remember that. Yeah, they you know, the thing about BrickCon is what you can do when you get like tens of thousands of pieces, you know, and then go to a Lego store or Lego itself and purchase like a big huge bag of those little gear shifters and then go crazy. Okay, well, it is about time for a mid-meeting break here. And then right after that, we will get rolling with the presentation on ChatGPT. So let me get back to my slide here. Let's see, this should work if I share this thing properly. Let's see, Chrome tab. There we go. Okay, so you can see by the clock at the top, that's of course is local time here for me. So let's give it about 5 minutes or so. So we'll call it about 12:03-ish or so. Let's regroup back here and we'll get going with our presentation. Huh, that's interesting. I did a pause on the recording and I noticed that the Zoom, the time at the top of the slide there froze. That's kind of curious.
Oh, that's interesting.
Let's see here. I'm just going to do it again here just for a sec.
Trying to get myself organized over here too.
Yeah, sure enough. I'm using a utility, a Google Slides utility that allows you to insert the current time or current date or a countdown timer, etc., into a slide. It's just most convenient to just put in the time of day rather than messing around with a countdown timer. But yeah, it's interesting. So as soon as I stop recording on Zoom, the time freezes. You know, pausing or stopping. Apparently, that's kind of weird.
Weird.
Okay. Oh, well, I'll just let it go. So occasionally there's interesting discussions that occur during these break times. It's kind of fun when we actually capture that stuff, but it's not always. So, so I would say, you know, Lloyd, you can shoot for you know, well, whatever, you know, noonish to 12:15, 12, you know, I probably no more than 12:30. We'll let you know, I expect there'll be lots of discussion and questions and other things, and so we're all I know we've all been looking forward to this. So
Yeah, what I have for a format is about a little 5-minute introduction, kind of like you do. You know, here's a bunch of slides, here's some interesting areas and things to look at. And then we'll just turn it over for open discussion. I do have both ChatGPT and Bing, which is GPT-4, up and running. So as long as those hold, we can do live demos and whatever we want to do.
okay, cool. All right, so we are yeah, so Lloyd Moore is going to share with us some of his findings and explorations of ChatGPT and his and then obviously they'll be open for you guys to interact with that. So if you have you know, you can put stuff in the chat, as well as I don't know how, if you, Lloyd, if you want people to just jump in if they have a question, or if you want them to throw it into the chat and then you'll address it at a convenient point. I don't know what you want to do, but
yeah,
I'm going to go.
How many people?
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lloyd here, and we'll get rolling.
Yeah. Okay, we got 20 people. Okay, yeah, I'd say let's just kind of you know, I'm going to do a quick little introduction here on things, and then we'll just kind of turn it over to open discussion. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen. And that ain't going to work. Hang on a sec while I rearrange a couple windows here.
Yeah. Okay, so you have control.
Yep. Okay. Go. And let me share a window. Okay, can folks see that okay?
It does seem to be coming through.
All right. So I think everybody pretty much knows what ChatGPT is at this point. What we're going to do is just have an open discussion related to ChatGPT, its various uses, strengths, weaknesses, social impact, kind of wherever we want to go with this. I've got a set of slides we'll talk about, bringing up some interesting areas to start with. And then I've actually got ChatGPT and Bing, which is running GPT-4, up and running, so we can do live demos or, you know, queries, whatever we want to do. Before we do that, let's just go back in time a little bit. We've been here before. Those of us who have been around for a while remember a program called ELIZA. This was built back in the late 60s, early 70s. And basically it pretended to be a psychotherapist. You typed in a statement and it would respond to you. This used a really, really simple rule base and basically textual substitutions and rearranging. And it was just a really, really clever illusion for all intents and purposes. But it was, you know, even at that time, and as simple as it was, you know, if you've ever played with this thing, it was pretty engaging. This is actually one of the things, for folks that know me, know my background's in AI. This was actually one of the programs that kind of got me interested in it. So what we're looking at here is actually a capture of the ChatGPT interface. And I just asked it, well, tell me about ELIZA. And you can see here it generated 3 paragraphs on ELIZA. This is another example of ChatGPT. This was actually something I was working on for a personal project. I couldn't remember the correlation my stats has been a while. I couldn't remember the correlation coefficient formulas or what they were called or stuff like that. And I just basically said, show me mathematical examples of how to correlate one series of numbers to another. And, ChatGPT came back with Pearson's correlation coefficient. So one thing with this, always check the answers on these. We'll get to that in a moment. Pearson's correlation coefficient is typically what they call a correlation coefficient. It's the full name for it. The formula is correct. And then it gave me two others. Spearman's rank correlation coefficient and Kendall's rank correlation coefficient. And it's beyond the scope of this talk to get into all the details of what these things are, but it basically got this correct. And these are, these are fairly nice little textbooky descriptions, and there's my formula that I need to go implement. And, it's telling me what all the variables are, and, I can go double check that, make sure it's right. And for this one, for this little project, I was working in Rust. So what you're looking at is Rust code. It's kind of C-like. The point of this is not to talk about Rust code, but I told ChatGPT to create a function in Rust implementing Pearson's correlation. And so you notice it named it Pearson's correlation, and it's taking F64s, those are doubles. And then it, if you go through this code, we won't do that in detail, it basically implements this and returns the correct value. This is, as far as I can tell, a correct implementation. So this, it generated a little bit of code for me. So I said, way cool. Now let's do Spearman's correlation. Not so good. Well, at least at first it's like, okay, use statistics correlation Spearman. This is an import statement in Rust. And then you see it just wrapped it, basically. Unwrap is don't worry about that. That's not part of the, that's handling an error code or an optional value. But it basically stuck a little wrapper around it. And I said, oh, cool. There's a library called statistics that I can go grab, and this has all this stuff in it, right? And then down here, it's basically, this is the more Rust stuff, but it's saying statistics is going to use 0.9. That's a version number. And I said, oh, cool, I could just go grab this library and I can party on. The statistics crate does not exist. In Rust, there's a repository called crates.io where all this stuff comes from. It's part of the Rust development environment and ecosystem. This is total hallucination. It just made this up out of nowhere. It doesn't exist. The library doesn't exist. Version 0.9 doesn't exist. And yeah. So like I said, you've got to watch it. Next one I came up with is I was actually looking at this right around the time Donna did her presentation. And it's like, hey, let's write a program for a mini sumo bot. Let's see if it can do that. And, it said, well, I can't really do that. I'm going to provide you with some information. And, it gave you some nice, here's how you read your sensors. Here's how you do your decision making. Here's how you do your actuator output. Okay, it's reasonable, but it definitely shows a limitation of this model. Let's try something a little less techy. Tell me how to make some chocolate chip cookies. Okay, that looks like a pretty reasonable recipe. I haven't tried it. I've tried this a couple of times, and with slightly different quotes. And we can dive into this later. A couple of things I've noticed. Whoops. A couple of things I've noticed is at different times when you ask it, the amount of vanilla it puts in changes. and the oven temperature. This will go to 1 teaspoon or 375 Fahrenheit. So, you know, you get a few different answers. The other point I'd like to bring up is, you know, sci-fi has been dealing with this topic of what is just recall versus what is actual intelligence for quite a while. Multiple contexts, multiple episodes in multiple different series. I just grabbed this one from Star Trek. The episode Elementary Dear Data deals with this issue pretty directly. People into Star Trek, you know what a holodeck is. But the doctor, Dr. Pulaski, challenges Data to, you know, are you just remembering a lot of details or are you really doing reasoning? And, you know, they go into the holodeck and, you know, through the various, you know, as the story unfolds, you know, they go through different aspects of, are you just memorizing stuff or are you really intelligent? I think the same, you know, the same discussion is brought up in real life now by ChatGPT. Okay. Let's see. So that's basically what I've got for kind of an introduction to this. At this point, let's see, what I'm going to do is open it up to folks. Not quite sure if I share. Let me try this real quick. Let's just see how this works. Okay, can people reasonably see that? Oops, hang on.
What we see is your face.
Yep, now let me ask the question again. Can people reasonably see that? You should be seeing a, hang on.
Yeah, that's better. We're seeing the GPT, ChatGPT, and then the Bing. So.
Oh, okay, good, because on my side, the control bar moved over my email, which is currently showing my mom's tax return. So don't worry about it. I think in lieu of this presentation, we'll just close that screen completely. Okay. So I just kind of open it up. What would folks like to do? People's thoughts on this? You know, there's a whole lot of avenues to go down when discussing this thing. The technology, social implications, the work implications, the ethical implications, its capabilities, its limitations.
When you showed the mini sumo answer, it made me wonder what it would do if you gave it a language and a platform.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just too wide a field. If you gave it some specificity, it might give you an actual program.
Yes, and we actually did this. That same topic came up. Let's see. That same topic came up in our. I did this for the C++ users group. So in that one, it was create a mini SumoBot program for an Arduino microcontroller where the motor outputs are on pins 1 and 2, and the sensor outputs are on 3 and 4. And let's just see what that does. We'll see what it does today.
So what is the typical time before it starts to answer?
It really varies. You see, this time it took a couple seconds. And, oh, this is entertaining. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Sometimes it takes a couple seconds. Sometimes it's immediate. I've actually given it a couple that it's paused for maybe up to 30 seconds.
So if you ask the same question multiple times, does it give you slightly different answers each time you ask, or?
Yes. That I do not know how or even why they're doing that, but there are cases where you can do that.
Are you on a free account or a paid account?
This is a free account. And I have seen, we had a person that had a paid account in the other session, and it generates pretty much about the same. So what you're actually seeing, each little blurb that pops out is a pass through the neural net. So the way this thing works is it basically tokenizes the input you give it and then feeds it to the neural network. It generates another token and then feeds that complete data set to the net, generates another token, feeds that complete data set to the net, up to about, I think for GPT 3.5, it's about 4,000 tokens. So really, it's the way this thing works, it's in principle not much more than autocomplete. It's just a very, very fancy, very, very accurate version of that.
So you're saying each time it spits out a little bit of text, it's because the entire previous thing, question and answer, was fed into it.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's basically how this thing understands context. So, unlike prior, and let me just put a little disclaimer in here. I'm not an absolute expert on this thing. I have not dug into the code. I've done some general reading about how it works. So take everything I'm saying here with a grain of salt and kind of an enthusiast level of interest. And I want to go dig into it further, but I haven't had time. But yeah, generally what it does is every time it generates a little bit of code, and a token is kind of like it's kind of like a syllable, right? It's not a whole word. I initially thought it was a whole word, but when you really get into it, it's more like a syllable, and that's not an exact mapping either. I'm not sure what they've done to generate the common tokens.
It's interesting that it colored this drawing like it had a particular editor in mind and tried to mimic the way that editor colored this program.
Yes. Yep. And you'll also notice it did something, that's one thing that's interesting about this is you'll notice, it colored the program. Something else somebody mentioned, it also put comments in the program, right? It didn't just give you a bunch of code. It's giving you comments, set the motor pins for output, set the sensor pins for input, read the values. And, for a simple program, this is reasonably, reasonably well. I mean, it's, you wouldn't want to use it directly, but it's a nice little starting point.
But the next thing you would do is you add the, oh crap, I've got an extra microphone here. You go back and say, well, add a green light on this IO when it's going forward, and a red light on this IO when it's going back, and have it regenerate the code.
Okay, so you can actually do that. Let's give it the pin number. Say pin 5. Let's see if it'll do this. I haven't tried this before, obviously.
So this will be interesting to see its choices, because when you're turning, are you moving forward or backward? Does it get it right?
Yeah.
Because if you're turning in place, neither of them should be lit. But if you're turning by stopping one wheel or the other, then you could get forward and backward motion.
Okay, well, that choked it.
Yeah.
It usually recovers if you F5, refresh the screen, or sometimes the regenerate response will fix it.
Let's try a regenerate response. Nope. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just go So this is ChatGPT 4. Let's just, yeah. Let's just copy this out and drop it into ChatGPT 5, or excuse me, GPT 5, or GPT. I got my terms mixed up. Let me start that again. This is ChatGPT 3.5.
3.5.
Let's drop it into into GPT 4 under Bing and see what it does. So this only came out a couple of days ago. This is something I've noticed interesting with the Bing version of this is it actually does searches. Yeah, note it's a lot faster.
And quite different.
And very different. The other thing I noticed when it did this time, notice it uses an L289 IC to control the motors. I haven't seen that before. Oh, and this is also interesting. Note it. Look at this. It just completely overrode my pin designations and reassigned the pins. It just basically told me, yeah, you don't know what you're talking. Okay, so it got the sensor pins right. And then it picked up motor pin 1 is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's entertaining. I have no idea if this code is correct, but it's interesting to see what it does. Okay, so now let's give it the next step.
But isn't it effectively finding lots of examples of code and then saying what you're asking for is similar to what was documented around these other examples of code, and then just kind of coming up with one, just combining all those examples together. It's not like it's putting comments in, it's just regurgitating code and saying, oh, this code has this text right here, so I'll include it in my response.
Exactly. And so far as I have seen, it's not capable of doing anything that it can't find an example for.
So
it may not find an exact example, but it does find pieces and put them together.
So it's adhering to Microsoft's principle: be correct but not helpful.
So your challenge that you gave the other version when you added the light this up when you're moving forward and this when you're going back is, I think, is a great test, because you can't really do that unless somebody is out. It came across an example that specifically spoke to that, or B, it has a much more understanding of the context of what it's building than I think it actually does.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I don't think this thing has any context of what it's building. It's acting as a very fancy search engine.
Yeah. So I think that was an excellent test, and the outcome was what I was expecting.
Yeah. So now let's see what GPT-4 does with exactly the same input. Okay, this one did it.
Now, one of the things that they've said about the GPT-3 is that it was trained on internet content up to, what was it, 2019?
2021.
2021. So is this GPT-4 have more recent content?
Yes. And I do not know the cutoff date. It was not only trained on more recent content, it was trained on a much larger content base. And just keep in mind too, training these things is not cheap. The cost I've seen for training this thing is $4 million a shot. So this thing runs on big data center supercomputers with I believe they're using NVIDIA A100 GPUs in the data center is what they run this thing on. It takes a lot of them.
So both of the programs used the pin 1 and pin 2 as the variable name, but picked different port pins for those.
Yep.
And the other one, though, sensor 1 and 2 have the pins that you requested, right?
Yes.
So I wonder if this is something about the Arduino.
No, I think what's going on there. So one is the neural net generation, and the other one, and I haven't looked quite deep enough into what they're doing with this other layer. There is one more layer on this thing, which is keyword substitution. So it actually maps keywords into the result, and I don't know how that works. This kind of strikes me as that layer just overlaying, my specific parts of my request into the answer. This is interesting though. It did green light pin 5, green light pin 6. Oh, now this is interesting. Take a look at this. This is a really nasty little bug here. So, well, let me highlight here. Yeah. So green light pin 5 is on pin 5. Red light pin 6 is on pin 6. Motor pin 1 is on 5. And enable pin 1 is on 6. So this code is clearly broken. It did it, but it gave me something that clearly will not work. My indicator lights and my motors are on the same pins.
So it's very interesting that the two different cases both for some reason decided that your pin 1 and pin 2 were logical and your pin 5 and pin 6 were physical. But why?
Right. Who knows?
And then it didn't understand what it was saying, basically, so that it was happy when you said add 5 and 6. What basically it was your fault, right? Because you, reading through its first answer, saw that it was using pin 5 and 6 and then told it to use those pins over.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
So you caused the problem, well, in a way, right? If you're not careful to understand its previous answer, you can end up with garbage for your new answer.
Yeah, good point. I didn't catch that. Okay, so let's try this. Let's just say, hey, pins 5 and 6 are
doubly allocated.
Yeah.
Fix that. Still using 5. Oh, it just caused them to be logical pins now.
Let's see what it did here. So first it apologized. How nice of it.
So it just used 2 other pins.
Yeah, and that's reasonable at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, it grabbed 11 and 12.
Now, can you get it to make a mistake like there isn't such a pin on that particular processor?
Yeah. So let's say
there you go. Pick another pin. Of course, that's kind of trivial because it only needs to change one spot.
Well, it should also be noted that in the original, in the version 3, you gave it 2 motor pins. And it came up with a solution that only used 1 pin per motor.
Yeah.
In this solution, it found code that used that L298 driver, which has a PWM pin and enable pin or something. And so it's forced to have 2 pins per motor.
Yeah.
So it didn't exactly, its starting point didn't really match what you had asked for. And now I think to what you were speaking about earlier, once you start down a path, it's using the interaction that it's had with you as some form of context to say, well, you didn't complain too much about this, so I'm going to keep going down this path.
Yep, exactly. Now, this is interesting. So it pulled pin 12 off, but now it's
using 5 again.
It's doubled up pin 5. So let's try this.
What if you feed the code back into it and ask it to check for bugs? Would that solve it?
So it is getting the code fed back into it.
Right, but asking it to check for bugs might
here. Let's see if it can find it.
Show me a mistake in your program.
Yeah.
I guess the programmers of the world still have jobs, huh?
Right.
Yeah, let me put it this way. So most of you folks know I am a software engineer. I'm not too worried about my job going away yet. I know it will someday, but yeah.
It seems to me that the success rate of this really depends on the accuracy and specificity with which you make your request.
Right.
Yes, that is absolutely true. So this is interesting. Yeah, it at least looked at pin 5, but it did not understand pin 5 is still doubled up between the motor and the light.
Right. So what was the mistake it found?
I'm not actually sure. I mean,
So can you get snarky with it? It's like, why can't you write functional code?
Oh. So what I really like is the idea that, a lot of programming is gathering together little facts, right?
Okay, that's
No, that wasn't the issue. Come on, get it right. I apologize for the mistake. Can you please tell me that?
now. So, let me say this in a reasonably politically correct manner. This is what a human would do. And I know that from multiple levels of experience. I'm almost tempted. I'm almost tempted to put in, come on, what do I pay you for? But let's not.
Oh, no.
The last thing I need is, software engineer turns Bing hostile. Anyway, I think to the point we've definitely shown this thing does have limitations to it around its understanding of even, I wouldn't even call this moderately complex code. This is still fairly simple, and it clearly doesn't really know what it's doing. It's just regurgitating samples from what it can find and putting them together. But
now, I was just going to point out, I heard on the news about how at some local companies, programmers are uploading code to it.
Yes.
And asking it to do stuff to the code.
Yes.
Right. Refactor this code for this purpose. And of course, that code is what, intellectual property, and they're being told
Yep.
not to do that. But have you had any experience with how you can use, if you don't care about that aspect of it, how you can use this to help you modify code that you've already written?
I have not tried that for multiple reasons. One, I happen to work in aerospace, and everything I work on comes under ITAR. So in addition to intellectual property issues, there's also security issues involved. So yeah, I have not tried any of this for anything I work on. I've got a little hobby project. I have not tried anything around that either. That's my IP. But that's, at least if I was going to try to get it to refactor anything there, it'd be a significant amount of code. So I don't know what to do with that. It is interesting though that it stopped attempting and it asked me for what the issue is. Let's try it this. Pin 5 is double allocated.
Yeah. Oops. Tried. Yeah, you spelled it wrong.
See what it does with that.
And it went to 4, but 4 is double allocated now.
4 is double allocated. I could very rapidly see this turning into a game of whack-a-mole.
You're right. So what I
So
read,
just like a normal programming experience.
Yeah.
right. So I read a thing on ChatGPT, and the example that they gave was they had it write a science, or what do you call it, a physics article or something, or a paper basically. And the paper had a citation in it, which turned out to be a fictitious citation.
Oh, yeah.
Citation to an article that did not exist.
Yeah. Yep. That, oops, there you go.
I feel like that might be an interesting thing for you to pontificate on a little bit, Lloyd, like the hallucination, and you used that word earlier. To me, I view that as one of the key problems with trying to use large language models, which are like producing statistically plausible language,
right,
to generate like factual or functional information, which is kind of not what they're fundamentally built to do.
Right.
So maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah. So by the way, folks, just a quick note here. I just got 3 power bumps. So I am on UPSs, but if I disappear, I've lost power. So yeah, so that's exactly this example right here. The Spearman correlation, that's exactly what it did. This sounds totally reasonable to go, I want a Spearman correlation, go find a library called statistics and use it. And this does not exist. So I found multiple cases of that where, it just comes up with things that sound plausible that don't exist.
It's possible that some example that it had studied had a statistics package there, and it didn't realize that it had to include that in the answer.
Well, no, I suspect, and this is total speculation. I suspect, so I told it to do this in Rust, right?
Right.
I suspect what it, kind of what was maybe going on in the background, and this is total speculation on my part, and probably not any better than what GPT is doing. But it found code at somewhere that had a Spearman correlation in it, but in a different language, and then just converted it to Rust.
Oh,
because I can totally see that this is this library would exist for Python, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by the way, this is actually something. Let's do a new topic over here. So GPT 3.5, GPT 4, I'm going to give it the same statement.
Yeah.
Okay? We did this on Wednesday as well. Just to show you the improvement of this.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, okay. So, you know, definite improvement between 3.5 and 4. One, it's not hallucinating. Two, and I haven't had time to completely go through this,
Right.
but at least the off the top of my head, this looks like reasonable Rust code, but I have not matched it up to the formula.
Now in 3.5, you could say, try again, but don't use statistics correlation Spearman.
Okay, let's try that. Which, by the way, this is exactly
Well, now it's coding.
now it's coding. Okay.
So how does that compare to the other one?
Yeah, let's see what it does here in a minute.
First of all, it's doing the nice colored thing, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think that's just a difference in the interface between the two. I don't think that's ChatGPT. I think that's the OpenAI page versus Bing's page. Because you know, this is okay. So it's identified the code as Rust. Spearman correlation. Okay, let n equal x. Okay. So the 3.5 version did not do the assert. So it did. It's interesting. This one actually checked its. Put a check in there. Oh, this is interesting.
What's mutt?
Oh, mutt is mutable. That's a Rust statement.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, all variables in Rust are read-only unless you declare them mutable. Let's see. It is interesting. This version decided to take rank out and put it into a separate function. Where this one is basically doing it. It's with a map function, so it's. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but this looks like enough of a difference. I'm tempted to say one of them is wrong.
Or it could just be two different examples that, you know, each of them found an example, said this is close enough, and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I'd have to actually spend some time and go through this with, you know, kind of with a fine tooth comb to see what's, you know, is it correct or not. Yeah, it is interesting though, of what it does. But you know, as a software engineer, I think I'm safe for at least another 6 months.
But well, as I was saying before, what I like is the idea that you could save a lot of time in all of the research you have to do to get the little pieces that you have to put together to do something.
Exactly. Yeah, that seems to be the central theme I found with this thing. Is it is absolutely wonderful at I call it pre-digesting the search results. You know, because I can go, we'll just go here, you know, with you Bing. But so this is just a, you know, standard Bing search, like Google or DuckDuckGo or anything.
Okay.
and I can just put in, find me some example code. And, okay, well, there's one in Rust. And I can read through here and think, okay, well, there's code I can grab out.
Right.
Let's see. There's another one, and hey, what do you know? There's my function right there.
Right.
So it can, or you can do all these things without it. Let's just say in Rust.
Now, so the advantage is it finds just what you're interested in, but it might omit things that you should have read.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I'm finding with this is if I know exactly what I want to look for, and I know pretty much the answer I want, a traditional search is still kind of the way I tend to default to. If it's ambiguous and I really don't necessarily know what I'm looking for, and I'm starting to, I'm just starting into an area that I don't have a lot of enough in-depth knowledge, like to construct a good search query. I find it's really helpful for that because it'll pull up some, I can just put in, kind of, hey, I'm generally looking for this, and it'll pull up something that's pretty darn close and kind of key me in. It's basically like asking asking another person, hey, how do you go about doing X, and, kind of getting that first level of information.
How about something like, find me an article describing how to do this and point me to the section of it that tells me how to do this other thing, this more specific stuff.
Yeah.
So that you could read that and then read around it.
Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so this is something I hadn't seen with the Bing before.
Ooh, we couldn't
So
find
it grabbed my last query and basically treated it as let's see. Well, that's interesting. I asked it for a specific example, and it gave it to me in R instead with a link, and then told me how to go learn Rust. So it's like, yeah, here's an example. Here's Rust. You go figure it out. Let's see. Okay. Anything else that people want to head down a different direction with this, or do you folks want to keep going down this this particular line of questioning?
I have a great many questions if you're interested.
Go for it.
So we talked about feeding code back into it, asking it to check for bugs. And another thing, in the Bing demo specifically, they used it to summarize text on a page. And I would like to think that that's accurate, but I haven't seen statistics on that. And I'm going to go through the whole list and you can pick your favorite one. We can talk about that.
Okay, let me take notes.
I'll just post it in chat.
Let's see. I think that'll work.
That reminds me of Summarize Proust, which was in one of the Monty Python. I don't remember exactly, but.
So another example of using it was to reverse engineer code. And I've given it assembly and just machine code itself in various architectures, and it can tell you what it does, like commenting its own code. It can comment other people's code.
Oh, that's interesting.
And we didn't talk about alternative ChatGPT bots. And not all of them require the same amount of processing. I posted one link to someone that made a bot for the r/buyitforlife subreddit. And that one specifically will give you links to posts that it used in its generation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Wow.
Okay, so I pulled that one up. Let's see. Let's give it. let's give it the same Spearman.
I don't think that one's gonna work.
Okay, you've played with this one more obviously than I have. What's a good query for it?
Something like, what set of hiking boots would you recommend? Something like that. Buy It for Life is a subreddit where people want to buy things once and never have to replace it.
Oh, okay.
The recommendations for hiking shoes is also right under it if you want the cached answer.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's see. What do we got? Let's see what we got here.
So is that based on the comments from the subreddit?
Yes, the comments, the posts, sometimes the links.
Okay. And yeah, this is interesting. It's generating references.
And I don't know why Bing doesn't do that yet, because it shows you the searches and what it searched for. It could just give you the links that it shows up with.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But that's none of my business. As like a footnote in this conversation, I suppose, my last bullet point was, when you look for something on Bing, you are not going to the website of the people that created this content. They are not getting ad revenue from your visit. And while it's not going to affect software engineering jobs, especially after that whole Pin 5 issue, people that write the blogs that provides content for ChatGPT and various other models, if they don't get money from ad revenue, they're going to stop writing things.
Yeah. That's one thing I've kind of realized with this thing too is I think it's even more subtle than ad revenue, because once people can just go look up whatever they need and not create any more, the body of text that these things draw upon to improve themselves will stop getting generated. And so there is kind of a finite limit to what you're going to do with this approach, right? It's the other one is too from from the modeling perspective, the amount of data it takes to get a 2x improvement in performance is a lot more than 2. Okay. At least with current techniques. So like, I don't know what the ratio of data they fed to 3.5 versus 4 was, but it was probably on the order of like 10 times more or something like that. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to feed it another 100 websites and it's going to get a lot better. No, they fed it a lot more data.
Wow.
So, future gains on this thing, it's new and there's a lot of data it hasn't seen yet. So yeah, future gains could come pretty quick. Just feed it more. But at some point that's going to limit out and they're going to have to, they're going to have to improve the algorithm, improve the learning rates and stuff like that. Let's see. Okay, feed X feed code back into it asking. We did that.
Those were just my bullet points. I think we've covered them all.
Okay. Something else folks would like to try.
Well, so I have there's like an interesting bit of trivia around language models and chat assistants, which is, so ChatGPT has been like very revolutionary, and it's built on top of the GPT 3.5 large language model, which is essentially a super powered autocomplete. But ChatGPT is clearly doing a little more than auto-completing.
It is. Yeah.
And one of the separations there is something called reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF.
Yep.
Which is like a training process, which I didn't understand particularly what that was. But so there's a project. So GPT 3.5 is generated from vast corpus of text on the internet. the reinforcement learning from human feedback is, unlike that, is this very labor intensive process where you have a bunch of human beings manually creating content to create a data set to guide the language model into being like a chat assistant and into being more conversational.
Okay.
So there's a project called Open Assistant, which essentially is trying to create an open source RLHF data set, because it's labor intensive. You're talking several thousand volunteers, each putting in possibly tens to hundreds of hours to create this massive data set. So it was super interesting to see what creating that data set actually looks like under the hood. Because if you go play directly with GPT 3.5, it will not generate nice bits of code for you. It will not answer your questions. You feed it some text and it will literally just sort of run with it like a drunk improv artist or something. Like it will just, whatever you started, it will just go off. It doesn't have any sense of like if you imagine taking your phone and just like picking the most probable word at the top of your keyboard, your keyboard's autocomplete, and just going. Like that's kind of its default behavior. And it's taken a great deal of effort to corral that into being, strain that down into being a chatbot. It truly, all it wants to do in its heart, to anthropomorphize, is to just autocomplete off into infinity. And constraining that infinite possibility space down into something that resembles kind of a human interaction is pretty difficult, and is entirely based on this very labor intensive RLHF process.
Okay.
Which, so I'll drop the link to the project. So if you want to contribute to an RLHF data set, you can. I've done a couple of these. But the gist of what, or actually I have an account here. I could sign in and show.
Okay, tell you what, if you want, I can release and you can just share a screen. Would you like to do that?
Yeah, I'll keep this super quick.
No, I think this is entertaining or educational.
Yeah. Let's see. So go to screen 2. Let's see. I think I still have my account here. Oh no, I used my Discord.
Yeah. The bigger problem, where did I sign in with? And how did I sign in? And which authenticator do I use?
Boo.
That's an example of where it would be nice to have something like a chatbot that could remember your particulars, right? I guess that's more like Siri, right? That it knows what you've done and does the right thing when you need it done.
Yeah.
One password.
I'm signed in on my laptop, but that's going to take a while.
Okay.
Anyway, so a brief summary though is what they are doing under the hood. And there's no AI when you create this data set, you're not allowed to use AI. This is 100% human data. Step 1, they have people create plausible questions. So you go to the website and you just come up with some question you might ask. How do I write this code? Summarize this for me, whatever it might be, all the sorts of stuff we've been feeding it. Step 2 is they have a human being sit down and manually research and write out an answer to that question in the character of a chat assistant. So if that question involves any questions about your identity, even though I'm not a chat assistant, I'm required when creating this data set to say things like, I am a large language model and am not able to have opinions on political, whatever.
Yeah.
Like those sorts of phrases that you see pop up all the time in ChatGPT come from the RLHF data set, because volunteers are instructed to use phrases like, I'm a large language model and cannot do this, or I'm as a large language model, blah, 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 blah. So that's step 2. Step 3, people can then respond to that, and entire conversations going back and forth of human generated answers and human generated responses, response from a human and a chatbot who's not a chatbot. It's actually just another human. Step 3, then they create multiple answers. So those conversations will kind of branch out And then people will be asked to rank the quality of those answers. And then step 4, they will actually tag each of those answers with what's the tone, what's the level of helpfulness, what's the level of factuality, etc. There's like an extensive list of detailed metrics that you can kind of rank each response and conversation on. This is then repeated. So these artificial conversations created entirely by humans that resemble kind of an idealized ChatGPT conversation. Do that 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 times. I'm not sure what size they're shooting for, but it's somewhere in that range, which is extremely labor intensive. It could take you half an hour or an hour to sit down and research, summarize Proust. And once that data set is created, then that is fed into an AI model that kind of sits on top of the GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 language model autocomplete system.
Okay.
And compels it to, as much as possible, have your responses resemble this data set. So these human conversations are sort of, because it's able to sort of you can ask it to do something in write me so and so as if it was by Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Rewrite the Declaration of Independence but by Shakespeare, or rewrite the Declaration of Independence but by Nickelback. You can do things like that. So what's happening under the hood is essentially saying, have this conversation with the human, but have it resemble this giant data set of conversations. And so without this huge RLHF data set, you don't get any of the sort of conversationality that we expect, or the friendliness. Like it's capable of being deeply bizarre and misanthropic. I mean, the chat models are occasionally happy to go off the rails too, despite these constraints. The constraints are not perfect.
Yeah, I was wondering how they got the. Yeah, I was wondering how they set some of the constraints that you see that just almost appear to be almost like a hard-coded rule base.
There's definitely some of that going on too. Anyway,
Yeah.
So Open Assistant. This was a really fascinating look under the hood of the transition from giant autocomplete system into chat assistant and what it takes to make that.
Oh, that's cool.
Leap happen. So you're welcome to make an account on there and poke around. You can kind of see these conversations and see these data sets. You can contribute if you want or not, whatever. But it's a really this is the very labor intensive manual part of this. Scouring the internet for data can be somewhat automated, but this part requires a huge volume of human generated content.
Oh, cool. Okay. So I'm just going to note we're at 12:05. I think, Steve, you had to depart fairly soon. So do folks want to keep going a little bit? You need to depart. What would folks like to do here?
Yeah, it's up to.
Uh-oh.
We are going to enter a time warp. Got it.
Let's see. All right, let me see. Does that?
Yeah, you fixed that.
Yeah, I got my microphone on my main computer stopped working, so I'm switching over to the my second computer here. So that should everything. I hope that sounds normal, right? You can all.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's not very loud on that guy either. That's kind of weird. Let's see. Yeah, so we could, it's up to you as far as how long you want to go here. And I'm going to munch some lunch here as I'm getting ready to go off hiking. I posted a link to the Lego spider that Doug mentioned earlier.
Oh.
And let me see here if I can just show you. Let's see here. I will show.
I'll tell you what, I'll release the screen. There we go.
Okay, so it should be coming up here. Of course, it's as always, it takes a while for that. But I'm sorry for the quality of the picture. I think my camera lens, my cell phone was a little bit, had some haze on it or something like that. But if you look really close at that, you'll notice this thing is covered with those little plastic gear shifts. I mean, it's like, and then I think the little things on the table underneath it are little Lego plastic spiders, you know. So you've got this big monster, and then you've got all these little guys around it. So, but I'm thinking this thing was a couple of feet across. I mean, this thing is huge.
Steve?
So, yeah.
We're really into creepy stuff this week.
Yeah, we are, aren't we? I mean, I don't know what that is. You know?
This thing reminds me of the replicators off of Stargate.
At this scale, it looks like a spider, but when you look closely at it, it has little fighter bays and stuff. It's a spaceship.
Yeah.
Now it really reminds me of the replicators off of Stargate.
Right.
So anyway, I was just gonna, let's see, let me do one more slide here. And this one you've all seen before, but just a kind of reminder of things there, you know, same Zoom link next month, of course. I'll post the link to the YouTube video and get the post on the website up to date here, hopefully soon. And send these chat presenter suggestions. And if you got anything at all, throw it in the chat before we stop recording. It was a comment I was thinking of. My microphone wasn't working. I was going to ask you about, back to ChatGPT. Is, you know, one of the problems with Google searches is how you get like literally billions of results. You know, it comes up and it's like, you know, I mean, what percentage of that is actually useful? I mean, and how deep are you actually going to go? You know, maybe a few hundred if you're really searching, you know, but I mean, what's the point of having a billion search results? You know, I mean,
right.
Does ChatGPT help at all?
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
Well,
it seems like, go ahead.
I was wondering.
I guess with that, you know, Steve, I can turn it back over to you, and we can do any last questions or wrap up as you would like to. So.
Okay. Well, go ahead and so anybody else got any you know, any grenades to toss out there on the on this topic? This is pretty fascinating. No, thank you, Lloyd, for
yeah.
I think that's the best thing to have take away from this discussion is the idea that the chat in ChatGPT is a whole nother system. So we have GPT and we have chat that makes it do what we see it do.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Alex. That was really good.
But makes me wonder what happens if you take. So here we have this very manual process that we need to do in order to improve the chat part. What happens if we take an example of that and feed that into ChatGPT and then go and correct the errors? Is that a way of maybe improving the rate at which that can grow?
I think they do that. I think the initial human data set is fed into a generative model that can create like 100 times more plausible examples.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I have played around with some types of things like that. And what I found is if you get it right, it helps a lot. And if you get it wrong, it goes really wrong really fast. But, you know, you just back it out and try it again. It's a stability thing.
And a question, do you guys have like a Discord group or anything?
No, we don't currently.
Getting there. I need to get back with Alex here about getting my just wrong unmute. I need to get back with Alex on getting the email set up, because to get the Discord group and the subreddit, we needed an official @Seattle Robotics email address.
Oh, cool.
And I've just been putting that off because I've been busy. But we are in the process of getting there.
We're on the verge.
You're on the verge. That close. My end set up. Alex is ready to go, and I've just been, you know.
You get busy with life. I know how that is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So I have one more project I need to finish up here before I can get back to that, but probably before the next meeting, we'll have that done.
Cool. All right. So, well, thank you everybody for jumping in, participating. This has been great fun. I've been looking forward to this one, and gave me a chance. We normally we do, you know, Alex is in Seattle and we're here in Idaho, so we normally do a weekly Zoom call, but we didn't do one last night like we usually do. So it was very nice to see your smiling face today, and yours too, Richard. Yes, I appreciate that. So, yeah. So with that, let's see here and get my, whoops.
I mean, that being said, we do still have an official IRC channel. If you're so involved in old tech and still do IRC, that is still running. See where things are.
We can also find ELIZA emulators too.
Right. And I can add that into the IRC channel as well if we really want.
We should do that.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. So that way there's always somebody there to talk to, even when there's nobody there to talk to.
Well, there's always someone there. We're just usually not talking.
At some point, if somebody wanted to buy access to the GPT for API, you could have GPT-4 chatbot inside your IRC chat.
Right. Works better inside Discord where you have your Seattle Robotics channel, and then you can have sub channels and things. Whereas IRC doesn't really have that. But
does that break some rules around, like, you're not allowed to mix technologies that are more than like 50 years apart? 40 years. I'm not sure where IRC goes.
Yeah, IRC is what it is and has some very strong adherence that make sure it doesn't drift very far very fast. And that being said, you know, I haven't changed my IRC client since, you know, the early 2000s when I moved away from whatever it was to IRSSI, and that's all I've been using since.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and conclude the meeting here, and I will stop recording, and can continue some discussions for a bit if you like, or we can just call the meeting.
I'm going to have to disappear as well. So thanks.